Have you ever told a lie that got out of control? Well, if that lie didn't make you a millionaire and then spiral into accusations of charity fraud before destroying your reputation across the globe, you're doing better than Australian blogger Belle Gibson. This week, we watched the Netflix documentary, The Search for Instagram's Worst Con Artist, which tells the story of a fake cancer diagnosis that spawned an app, a cookbook, and made Belle Gibson a household name before the truth finally came to light. What happens to a pathological liar when the house of cards finally comes crashing down? You're listening to Real Stories, Real Problems with Rachel and Roxanne.
Hi, Rachel. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you, Roxanne?
Well, I'm not dying of 10 different kinds of cancer. So, I guess
So that's a win.
yeah, it's a win. That was a great intro.
Well, thank you. Yeah, so for this episode, I knew of Belle Gibson before because I had heard about her on Maintenance Phase, which is one of my favorite podcasts, and I've seen her kind of pop up in other
I
places.
never have. We were going through the Netflix, stuff going on. What can we talk about? What can we talk about? And then you started freaking out. I was like, okay, who is this person? And you told me, and I'm like, oh, yes, we must do this.
Yeah. So if you're on Team Roxanne and you had never heard of Belle Gibson before this episode and you're not driving, give us a thumbs up in the chat.
Yes.
And if you knew who she was, give us a heart emoji. I want to see how many people were familiar with this before we started this process.
Considering all the cancer she allegedly had, a heart, a brain, a uterus, a spleen, a liver, whatever you can find in the emojis, it's an internal organ up there.
It's hard to find a starting point for this story. So this documentary starts with Belle's claims that she has stage 4 brain tumor and has 4 months to live in 2013.
Mm.
And she has this huge Instagram following and social media following, and she is pouring out her heart about her medical diagnosis to the world. And there is a journalist in Australia whose name I cannot pronounce. Richard Gouliat, whose wife was diagnosed with a terminal brain tumor for real.
Yeah.
In 2014. And so as they're Googling these various cancer treatments and, looking for support groups and things, they stumbled upon Belle, who used this weird brain tumor lie she concocted to create this image that if you eat a certain way, if you eat what she considers whole healthy foods,
right,
you can cure yourself of terminal brain tumor.
Exactly. And this is where I must kick in. Both of my parents had cancer. They both survived it. They died of completely other things. And their cancer doctor, oh my God, what do you call a cancer doctor?
Oncologist.
Thank you. Whoa. Oh God, here it is, the brain tumor. No. And their oncologists both said, sure, healthy eating when you have any sort of disease that is preying on the body is a good thing. It boosts your immune system. It puts you in a better overall mood, and certainly mood does help a lot. But that's not what you need to do. Only you have to have medication. You have to have chemo. You have to have radiation. You have to have all this other stuff. Sure, when you're sick with a chronic disease of any kind, eating healthy is great. It helps the body. It helps the brain. It releases those wonderful chemicals that help fight the disease. It's not going to cure your stage 4, melanoma in your brain.
And looking at it from today and looking back, it has this weird, why did anybody ever believe her when she was like, green juice will cure your brain tumor? But when you look at the audience that she was curating, it was people who they or their loved ones were dealing with this very aggressive cancer. And when you are in that situation, you are grasping for
Desperate.
anything.
You're desperate.
You so want. So if I do this, does it increase my chances of living even a little bit? People will grab on to anything in those moments.
One of my best friends had chronic migraine for 4 years. She spent $600 on a faith healer. And this is not a stupid woman. She's a brilliant, brilliant woman, but she was just so desperate. And I thought of her during this whole thing. I'm like, thank God there was no Instagram back then where she could have latched on to this snake oil, for lack of a better term. Yeah.
Yeah, it was so strange to watch. And as you're going through the documentary, we're talking to a bunch of people. We're talking to the guy who was the reporter who kind of discovered this whole thing. We're talking to some people who followed her kind of religiously and followed her advice. And one woman, it was the closest I came to breaking down in this documentary. She showed pictures of the surgeries and how badly like abused her body was from the chemo and all of the things. And she kept saying, why couldn't I look like Belle? She was so pretty and looked so healthy the whole time she was sick. And so this woman would put on fake tanner to kind of give herself a healthier glow because she thought she should look like Belle Gibson did while she was sick, with no idea that Belle Gibson was not sick at all.
Yeah.
She was a woman in her early 20s, lovely blonde, fit, lots of makeup, social media maven. So of course she looked beautiful.
Yes.
But she didn't have cancer.
She has cancer. You look like hell. I'm sorry. You do.
You deserve to be able to look like hell when you have cancer.
Exactly. And I also understand, like, when you have a profound diagnosis, your reaction, your survival instinct is, I'm going to tell everybody I know and call that information. I mean, when I was diagnosed with glaucoma last month, I was like, I have glaucoma. Oh my God, what am I going to, and everybody came out of the woodwork and, were telling me, and, surgery turned out to be my answer and I'm fine now. But you want that bond with other people, support groups and here's my doctor's name and here's my psychiatrist's name. Maybe he can help you deal with it. Oh, odd.
Well, and there is that need to tell people is very real.
Sure.
Back before we figured out I had food allergies and stuff that were impacting everything, my blood work was reflecting inflammation, like high inflammation in every category. And they got to a point where they were like, okay, so this is looking like leukemia numbers.
I'm fainted dead away right there.
Yeah, I had to have a hematologist. I had to go through like this whole process. And so, of course, I'm telling people I am being seen by a hematologist. They think I might have leukemia. I'm going through all this. And everybody's so panicked and on tenterhooks. But I can't keep that to myself.
Well, of course
it's not. The reason that my husband can't keep his mouth shut on anything.
Oh, yeah. So sad, we love him, but no.
So there was no way I was going to be able to tell him and have him not tell everybody. So this was just a thing where, okay, we're going to talk about it.
Exactly.
And so if you go back far enough in my social media, you may find a bit like, oh my God, going through leukemia testing. Oh my God, going through this. Even though I did not have cancer.
Right.
Because it was later determined that it was food allergies causing this severe inflammation.
Thank God.
But yeah, when I thought that was a serious thing I was dealing with, of course, like people.
Out. Yeah, absolutely. We want sympathy. We want touch. We want, not even, we don't even want, I know what you're going through, because I couldn't say that. I've never had leukemia, but I'm here, Rachel. I'm here. Call me any time. And that is comforting.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so it makes sense from that point of view that this young woman goes online to her audience of, social media followers and says, hey, so I have this very aggressive, deadly brain tumor. And so, of course, everybody would assume she was telling the truth, because why would you lie about that?
Exactly.
And so she's like going through this whole process, and she starts telling people she can heal herself through this diet, that she has created this whole healthy diet, and she creates an app.
Right.
Like she designs an app that it's called The Whole Pantry.
Right.
And it's sold. Like, she sells it as, you pay, I don't know how much it costs to buy the app,
Right.
but it was recipes. Essentially, it was a cookbook app
Sure.
that later got turned into a legitimate cookbook.
Right.
And she's now selling this cure for cancer that she doesn't have, that she invented whole cloth out of nothing. And really, she took this lie and decided to capitalize on the generosity of the cancer community
Yeah.
in this way.
Of all people to build the cancer community, and this is when I turn to Rachel, I'm like, there's nothing wrong with developing a healthy eating app. There's nothing wrong with writing a cookbook. These are two really helpful, good things that she could have done a lot of good with, but no, no, no. No.
Well, and at one point, relatively early in watching this documentary, we paused it and we had a conversation about, so do we think she knew she was lying and she was doing this to gain on other people, or do we think she is a pathological liar and they just spiraled out of control for her and she didn't know how to stop it? And I think we landed on it as the latter.
Yeah, yeah. Especially when we get a little further on and we talk about her more distant past and how she was always shady. She was always a little sketchy. And, there is something about the attention. People like attention. But this just goes beyond, like, I once met Barack Obama at a barbecue. I mean, that's not something you can really prove or disprove. This is like she's dragging more and more people in. And my favorite expression, my favorite saying by Benjamin Franklin, the only way that three men can keep a secret is if two of them are dead.
Yeah. So she's going through this whole process, and so the app she designed, or that she worked with somebody to design, was beautiful, like gorgeous colors and, lovely earth tones and the wonderful, pretty food pictures. And she created this process, and marketing wise, she was a genius. Like, she had some solid skills there, but she ended up making patients who use actual medicine feel guilty.
Oh.
Which is just vile. And it's one of the huge problems that I have with our current health administration, RFK Jr. and kind of that, is that they're pushing so hard against proper diagnosis, proper medication, proper all of that. And your problem would just be fixed if you just ate enough steak and shut up.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
That's not at all how anything works.
Right. Now, I'm all for more steak. I mean, that's a good thing, but you can't just eat steak in a vacuum.
And even if you did, it's not going to fix anything.
No, it's like, except make you not hungry for steak. No, absolutely. But she would be there, like, at her functions and at her rollouts and everything, and she'd be it's like, no, you don't need to. I'm surprised she's probably an anti-vaxxer. They didn't go into that.
Well, honestly, I don't know how much this aligns with her individual beliefs and how much of this is just a thing she accidentally stumbled on and she ran with it.
Right.
So I have no idea.
Right.
But as she's going through this whole, yoga and meditation and acupuncture and organic foods and all the things that you should
all good things again.
The reporter for the Australian starts to suspect that none of this is true. And he starts to suspect this because he is watching his wife go through this treatment, and he sees firsthand what needs to be done, how her body is reacting, how celery is not going to fix this for her.
Yeah.
And so he starts, like, digging into her past a little bit. He arranges a meeting.
Belle's past.
Digging into Belle's past. Arranges a meeting with her to talk about her situation. Like, so he's starting to do that journalism thing of, I need more information. And so we're talking to all of these people, and at one point, a woman named Claire Weaver, who is a journalist for the Australian Women's Weekly, is explaining that Belle is basically holding all of these launches and fundraisers and stuff, and is telling people she's donating all of this money to charity.
Right.
And as she's doing this, she's getting this reputation for being this incredibly charitable person who's, trying to take care of other people. And she gets a book deal, and she
Mhm.
gets a advance of 132,000 Australian.
Right,
It
right,
balances out to be about 94,000 US dollars from Penguin,
right.
which is not a small book
Oh, no,
company.
no, 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 no. That's a big one.
Uh,
And with all of her charity money, and I'm doing air quotes, miraculously now she's got $1 million house on the beach, and she's flying first class back and forth to Palo Alto to meet with the Apple executives, whose lawyers really dropped the ball by not looking into this. That's what I was foaming at the mouth about.
Well, and at another point, this documentary, we paused it and we were like, wait a minute. Steve Jobs died of cancer. And at the end of it, he got real woo woo, started turning to crystals and stuff to see if he could cure his cancer. Was this a thing Bill Gibson did to him? And it turns out, no, he died before that. But I think probably part of the reason her app was picked to be part of this larger
Mhm.
Apple Watch development
Right, right.
is because it spoke to Steve Jobs' situation
Legacy, right.
and the way that he wanted to try to cure his cancer. And
So funny. All of a sudden, Rachel turns and goes, "Did she kill Steve Jobs?" And I frantically Google when he died. I was like, "No, he died in 2011. He's safe."
yeah, so we're going through this whole process, and she the whole time we're seeing images of her, and
Mhm.
she just looks fantastic. She never even has bags under her eyes. She
No.
just the whole time, at some point, if you've ever known anybody with a severe chronic illness, whether it's cancer or fatigue or migraines or whatever,
Yeah.
you know that they look a little more haggard and a little more worse for the wear, even on their good days.
Mhm.
And so there is no amount of makeup that you can put on when you are battling a brain tumor.
All of my friends would know when you see me when I've had a migraine, I'll stagger out. You'll be like, "Go," because I just look sick. My eyes are baggy. I'm moving a little slow, slower. Everything. If I had all these different, and we'll get to all the cancers in a minute. I know I would just be in here with an IV of morphine, and I'd be like, "Serve me,"
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so as she's going through this process, Bella's inventing more and more cancers.
Yes.
And she's saying she's sicker and sicker. And at one point in July of 2014, she's having a birthday party for her son. And by the way, we never hear a word about her son or her ex or how they factor
No,
into any of this.
know who the dad is as far as yeah.
As far as this documentary is concerned, that was not important information.
No, no.
Um, but she falls to the ground and fakes a seizure. And as soon as people go to start calling the ambulance, she sits up and says, "No, I don't want Western medicine involved." So she is faking a seizure in front of her child.
Old. Who must have been scared to death because if she's only in her early 20s, he's got to be like a little kid, and he sees his mom. That would have scared the living bejesus out of me,
Oh, yes.
you know?
And as somebody who has a kid when they're
Yeah.
that little, my daughter's first memory that she has in her head, like she has other memories kind of around and before that, but what she has tagged in her memory as the first real solid memory she has is me in the hospital kind of covered in wires and stuff
Yeah,
because
yeah.
I have this weird condition that I can't exactly explain like names, but every 7 years or so, my heart gets a little bajiggity.
Okay, good to know after all this time that you're sharing this with me.
Well, here's the thing, there's never anything wrong.
Oh,
And every time I go, my heart feels weird, almost like it's trying to turn around in my chest. Like it feels odd. It's not beating right. And everybody around me wraps me up and races me to the emergency
right.
for the urgent
Oh,
care.
so what she saw was all the EKG
Yeah,
reads,
that
but she didn't understand
she
that
didn't understand.
hurt. And
Right.
it was, yeah.
And so she's seeing me attached to all this stuff. And every time they're wheeling me in wherever, and I'm like, y'all, I'm fine.
Right.
This is not necessary.
Yeah,
We can
yeah.
do the EKG. There's nothing wrong. But this is just a thing that happens to me
I know.
sometimes.
Mhm.
And every time I go in and I get all the scans, all the
Uh,
EKGs and all the blood work and everything, never a heart attack, never anything.
no.
Like, I don't even have. I went to the last time all this
Mhm.
shit happened. I went to the cardiologist he ran. I don't even have any plaque. Like, there's
Oh,
no
wow.
anything in my
No.
system.
Right.
And so there is, for whatever reason, this happens, and it's happened to me since first grade. So as a child, I remember I was having swimming lessons, and I had to sit on the side and watch because I was attached to this machine that
Oh,
was measuring my
monitor. Yeah.
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 And I couldn't get in the water. And so
Okay.
this is a thing that has happened to me since I was a tiny child. I'm very familiar with when it gets
Mhm.
weird, and it feels weird, but it's not dangerous.
Right, right.
And
It looks scary to a little kid.
right. And so my daughter, like, children grab onto that, and it's so scary to them.
Oh my god, that thing. So tough.
So for her son to watch her fall to the ground and fake a seizure.
And we women with large boobs know that there's always that one lead that's under one of those boobs that you don't find for like 3 more days. Yeah.
So she's going through this whole process,
And what
and it's the sitting
oh, oh god.
It's the sitting up and saying, "No, don't
Yeah.
call the ambulance," that triggers for a friend of hers who's
Uh.
being interviewed in this documentary. And the next day, she goes on Instagram and posts that she now has been diagnosed with cancer of the blood, spleen, brain, uterus, and liver, in addition to her terminal brain tumor.
Cancer and apparently seizures. Yeah. Oh, gosh.
Like, she's trying to collect them all, like they're Pokemon instead of cancer.
No, it's because you said that during the documentary, and that's going in there. Going in there.
And
Oh,
so at this point, her friend is really like,
Chantel.
yeah, Chantel is really starting to react suspiciously to all of this because, okay, the second we stepped in to try to help you, now we can't help you, and you have all this new stuff. People need to feel even more sorry for you.
Chantel's a real cancer survivor as
Yeah.
well.
And so they're going through all of this. She's really selling this app. She's selling this book. She's really getting kind of famous off of this. And she's still, as she's saying all this, she's still going to clubs. She's still going to, she's getting drunk. She's going out partying. So, and there's this very strong cognitive dissonance between the way she behaves and the things she says are going on in her body. And so at this point, they're talking to a Professor Kate Drummond, who's a director of neurosurgery at Melbourne Hospital, who's explaining the different kind of brain tumors. And she talks about, the glioblastoma is the most serious and deadly, and about that there are treatments that can prolong your life, but it's always fatal.
Always once out at the end.
And, brain cancer cannot appear in the spleen.
No,
and
it doesn't travel.
and that somebody who had that much cancer riddling their body would not be walking and talking. And they ask her, and she flat out says for the documentary, healthy food does not cure cancer.
Right.
And so at this point, Chantel and her other friend are showing up. They show up at Belle's house, and they confront her.
Yes.
And they say, are you sick? And she says, of course I am. And then so they start saying, well, let's see your medical documents.
Right.
And she says that she doesn't hold on to them, which as Americans, that's weird.
That is extremely weird. Oh my god.
And from our perspective, you have to hold on to those for insurance purposes. You have to have like all of those records yourself, because our system is very, catch as catch can. You're just gonna.
When my dad died in 2015, I found his inoculation records from the Korean War. Wow, Dad, good to know you were, vaccinated against leprosy in 1951. Good to know.
But so being confronted by her friends, and she's like, "Oh no, I don't keep my records." And they say, "Well, so who diagnosed you?" And she says, "Dr. Phil." And they're like, "Excuse me?" And she's like, "No, he's just this guy. His name is Dr. Phil, and I can't find him anymore. So who's to say?"
Right. Yes. Now we should express, because our listeners are American. We don't mean Dr. Phil McGraw. This is another Dr. Phil. I Dr. Michael for John Mulaney's little thing. And Mark Johns was the other doctor that we'll get to in a moment. But Dr. Phil allegedly, and this is my favorite part, went to her house. She doesn't go to the hospital for these tests. They come to her like she's Michael frickin' Jackson or something like that.
Well, and I know that other countries have better healthcare than we do, but that seems excessive.
Excessive. Yeah. Yeah.
And so all of this is happening. She is now being confronted by people who have figured out, holy crap, she is lying to us. And her book launch is gonna set for 12 hours later.
Yeah.
This is the night before her book is supposed to launch, or the day before her book is supposed to launch.
She must have been shitting bricks.
And so she keeps, even through all of this, as she is being confronted by people who are now figuring out that she's lying, and it's kind of clear that the jig is up, she's still holding on to it. Like she's holding on to it with both hands. And she keeps urging people to turn down traditional medicine and just eat fruit, which in my mind makes her a murderer.
Yes.
That's
yes, absolutely. Certainly criminally negligent homicide. Absolutely.
And so her app comes preloaded onto the Apple Watch when it was released. Like it's one of the original, I think it was 20 apps that came with the thing. And so Chantel finally is listening to this, and Richard, the journalist,
Julia,
he is meeting with her to talk to her and have her fill in her backstory on tape as an interview. And it's not making sense to him. He's listening and he's feeling like this is kind of a scam. And so Chantel goes to the cops and a lawyer and tells them what's going on. And they push back and say, "You're bringing a case of slander and defamation against this poor, sick young woman." So she's treated like she's the bad guy here.
Right. And she wasn't asking for any money or anything like that. There was nothing in it for Chantel.
And one of the things that is addressed in the documentary is that nobody at any point that was involved in the capitalizing on her situation ever checked her medical history, ever did any research to figure out if she was sick or not.
Exactly.
They just kind of went with it and treated it like this is good marketing.
Right.
And so, they're going through all of this stuff, and Belle finally agrees to meet with Richard at a cafe. And when she shows up, she's late. She tells him she was in a car accident because nothing good ever happens to this woman.
Right.
And she tells him that the reason that she doesn't like Western medicine is because she's always had this difficult relationship with doctors and that they lead her astray. And he asks her if she doubts the diagnoses that she has. And she says, "No, I think it was more of a misdiagnosis than a fiction." So at this point,
right,
she's now acknowledging that
she said the word fiction, and the two of us turned, like our necks snapped as we looked at each other.
So clearly, there is something here where she's now starting to pull back her story, or starting to surprise, I'm all healed from all my deadly cancers. And so they're going through this process, and as Richard is researching this, it is discovered that all the charitable donations she made, none of the charities ever received that money.
What a shock.
And so this then blows wide open.
Oh, yeah.
And becomes major news in Australia. And so Chantel just texts her and says, "You should probably check the news, but you've got this, right?"
And one thing we were talking about was with the addition of all these extra cancers, that completely negates her whole healthy food solution, because it's clearly not working. If not only does she still have the brain cancer, but now she's got like these 10,000 other cancers. So what was she trying to gain? Was she that psychologically hooked on the lying? Was it that dopamine rush you get when you get away with something? It was a weird, weird thing to do.
Well, and I almost wonder if, like, there are some people who, once they have a thought in their head, it
Yeah.
becomes true.
Truth, yeah.
And so once she had the thought and she said it out loud to people,
Mm-hmm.
did she then believe that lie?
Entirely possible.
Or is this a thing where she knew she was lying, but she really liked the lie?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think back to the episode we did about the woman who doesn't exist.
Oh, Tanya Head?
Yeah.
11?
About how she made up this whole story about being a 9/11 survivor for the attention. She didn't want any money. This wasn't a thing she wanted money for. She just needed to lie to people and feel like important in a community.
I got more and more detailed and more detailed. And yeah, I mean, I truly do believe that a lot of people with pathological lying, once you repeat something to yourself, and that's what your memory does. Your brain does help do that sometimes. It rewrites, it's a trauma response. It rewrites a bad thing that happened to you, but not something out of whole cloth like this.
Yeah, so at no point do they actually address it. Does she believe this, or does she know she's full of it?
Right.
And so she's explaining, oh, it's not that I didn't give the charities the money. I just have cash flow problems. She's going through all this stuff.
Right.
And so Richard keeps digging, and he discovers that she was a big part of a skateboarding chat forum back when the internet had, that was like the height of the internet.
Right.
And she was super goth and super into drinking.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's reaching out to people that are part of his community. And then as he's digging into this, Belle disappears offline. She removes all of her posts. She removes her social media, everything. But it's too late. They know what they're looking for. And so as he's digging into her history in the skate scene, it turns out she's made up a bunch of shit there too.
Mm-hmm.
She's told people that, crazy stories about having heart surgery and being in a coma, and how she went into cardiac arrest and died for 3 minutes.
She was 19, and there's nothing wrong with being into skateboarding or being goth or drink. This is when you're in your late teens, you try on different personalities, you do all this sort of stuff, but she just had to just take it to 11.
Well, and it was weird because another kid in the skateboarding community really was sick.
Yeah.
He really was. He had a brain tumor.
Right.
And he died.
Yeah.
And 3 or 4 months later, her brain tumor story pops up. And she starts, explaining all of this stuff that she's so sick and all of this stuff. And if you look at all the things she said she's gone through, in the course of a year, she died on the table, was in a coma, had open heart surgery a couple of times, not just once. And through all of that, now she's got these crazy cancers riddled all through her body.
Exactly.
Not a single scar or anything, not even like a pallid color to her face to show that she is feeling sickly.
Best looking dying person I've ever seen.
She's going through all of this, and the world has caught on. The world knows. This is now public information that she appropriates other people's illnesses and incorporates them into her own narrative, and that she's making all of this stuff up.
Form of Munchausen.
Yeah, I mean, I can't decide if she is like a Munchausen's, like, serious pathological liar, or if she's just a bitch. Like, I can't.
Because people with Munchausen's go to doctors. They like attentions from doctors, but she's never seen a doctor.
At least as far as we're aware.
Right.
And so as she is being questioned by people, because now that it's come out that she's a fraud, everybody wants to interview her.
Right.
And so Claire, the woman from the Australian Woman's Weekly, she comes out and is the first person to interview her after her exposure and says that Belle would just kind of like go blank and she couldn't remember things and would deflect and ramble. She said it was like trying to nail jelly to a wall.
I love that phrase.
And so now Belle has things to say about the rest of her family.
Right, because of course they're not normal either, according to her, right? Mm-hmm.
And so she talks talking about her mom has MS and her brother is autistic. And she was the one who had to raise her brother because her mom was sick all the time. And now she has no relationship with any of her family members.
Mm-hmm.
And Belle's mom is like, excuse me. It makes her husband, Belle's stepdad, call the media and yell at them for saying mean things about her.
Oh God! And he went right. I love Belle's stepdad. Belle's stepdad is my favorite person in here. Now, I mean, now to be fair, her mother did have MS and sadly did pass away shortly after the documentary was made. But her brother is not autistic. We saw him interviewed. He's kind of baffled as to why he would say he was autistic.
And so they're now all pulled out of the shadows and
Right.
thrown into this because Belle needed to deflect. And we did kind of wonder. So her brother and her mom and her stepdad had to have seen her in the news. There's no way that they were not aware of what she was doing.
Right.
And at no point did any of them be like, "Wow, she's really sick.
Yeah.
We should call her."
Call her. Exactly. Right.
And so they're going through this whole process, and Claire and her editor and Belle's mom Natalie and her stepdad Andrew go out to dinner and drinks, and they're talking about this, and Natalie disavows a lot of what Belle told Claire and explains what a struggle it was to be Belle's mom.
For sure.
Which, given her behavior, I mean, yeah.
Yeah. Which means, yeah.
And her brother is interviewed and he says, I'm just like shy and quiet.
Right.
He's very hurt by everything that Belle is saying about the family, and says that, Belle and her mom were, on again, off again with their relationship, and that they argued about money a lot. And then they're reaching out to friends of hers from high school.
This is great.
And one woman, Shelby, says that Belle told her she was in the witness protection program and that Belle wasn't her real name. And so he has been lying, like flat out lying to people in their faces for a decade, at least at this point.
Yeah.
And then Nick says that Belle moved in with a quote unquote old man. Nobody knew who he was or what their relationship was.
Think my mom and dad or stepdad, if I'm sorry, they'd be banging on the police's door and say, this old man down the street kidnapped my underage daughter. You might want to look into that, Oh.
And so this whole thing is like a game of telephone when you're to your children, and everybody's, well, she said, well, no, that's not what I said.
Exactly. Oh, God.
And just as a funny aside, I could never ever play that game as a kid. Every time I did, I messed it up because I'm partially deaf. I couldn't see anything.
Awesome. And you would have to start. You would have to be at the beginning of the telephone line. Okay.
And so 60 Minutes ends up paying Belle $75,000 for a TV interview, which I'm sorry, what?
What the actual fuck? Yeah. Now, question, did that $75,000 make its way to any of the charities that she ripped off? No!
No, they actually addressed that at the end of the documentary. She owes hundreds of thousands of dollars in fees to the Australian government and promised money to charities. None of them ever saw a dime, still haven't as best as we're aware.
Right. Well, it's a witness protection now, probably.
And so in the process of giving this 60 Minutes interview, she doesn't know how old she is. They can't even get her to pin down her actual age. And so then they bring in a psychologist because they asked her, they said, would you accept that you're a pathological liar? And she says, no. And so they bring in a psychologist to discuss why people lie. they talk about, we need to create an image or a personhood that they wouldn't ordinarily experience, that's what they're going for.
Like a little talented Mr. Ripley thing going on here.
I guess,
Yes,
man.
I mean, I can say the only time that I have lied is to get out of trouble or get somebody else out of trouble. I don't make shit up out of whole cloth just for attention because my life is pretty freaking amazing to begin with. Nobody would believe it if I came out with some stuff. Ah,
Well, and there are situations where I think people don't realize that they're lying,
of course, yeah,
or that
yeah,
they don't realize that what they think is true is not real.
sure.
None of that applies to Beth.
No,
Uh,
no.
and so, as they're digging into this, she explains that her cancer was apparently diagnosed with quote unquote German technology
Yes.
and some box you sit on with
Yeah.
blinking lights and sliding panels. She might have been abducted by aliens. I will give her that.
That would make sense. Exactly. Yes.
And so she goes on to explain that, it's Dr. Phil and Dr. Mark Johns. And so they figure out that Phil is a real dude.
Yeah.
He's
Phil.
alternative health practitioner.
Yes,
He's not a doctor. He's not qualified to diagnose anybody with anything.
Right.
And Dr. Mark Johns does not exist. There's no record of him in any medical facility.
Exactly. So they brought their like weird device over to her mansion, apparently, and she sits in it and they go, yeah, cancer. No lab tests, no blood work, no urinalysis, no biopsies, nothing. You just sit on this box and the lights blink. Oh my God.
Yeah, I gotta tell you, if I invited a medical practitioner to my home and they did some weird thing and they were like, oops, you're full of cancer, I'd go see a doctor at a hospital and be like, was that legit?
Yeah, right, exactly.
And so at no point, even if we take her at her word that Dr. Phil and Dr. Mark Johns brought their German alien equipment and did some kind of like at-home assessment of her.
Right.
She didn't go for a second opinion.
Yeah, yeah.
She went straight to the internet and built a community and bilked them out of money.
Right. Yeah.
And so, and apparently in all of this, she says she has a stroke.
Oh, yeah.
Process
She had a stroke too. Mm-hmm.
No, they're talking to her about all of the things, and it turns out that early on in this fake process of having these fake cancers,
Mm-hmm.
she befriended a family with a 7-year-old, Joshua Schwartz,
Yeah.
who did have the terminal brain cancer.
Right.
And it seems like she took his cancer symptoms and applied them to herself.
Right.
Which is on brand, given that
Yeah.
the guy died and then she picked up his
stuff.
his
Right,
stuff.
right. Mhm.
So yeah, she seems like if something has happened to somebody else, it's happened to her too.
Right.
Is the way that she's approaching it.
Right. Right.
And they ask both Apple and Penguin if they want to make a statement on this, and they did not issue a statement. I think the closest Penguin came was saying that, the cookbook is a solid cookbook. It doesn't matter the origin of it.
Like I said, there's nothing wrong with writing a cookbook. Sure, go for it.
And so she ends up being fined like 420,000 Australian dollars, just under 300,000 US dollars, and just refuses to pay it.
Right.
She's giving nobody any money. She's facing no repercussions or consequences. She's not apologizing. And then the very end. Oh my God, Roxanne, tell us about the very end of the end.
And just thought it couldn't get any stupider. We suddenly see this grainy footage of her dressed in Ethiopian garb. Now remember, she's like the whitest person ever, and she starts speaking in this terribly affected Ethiopian accent, or what a generic Western person would think an African accent would be, and saying a few words in an Ethiopian dialect, and she's calling herself now Sobantu. Yes, and she's pretending to be Ethiopian, and the Ethiopian people threw her out.
Yeah, she went.
Yes, the poorest country in the entire globe. The poor, they were like, no.
Well, and the thing of it is, she went there and told them that she has these charities and she was going to bring money into Ethiopia. And then once they tracked her down and got video of her pretending to be Ethiopian, they reached out to Ethiopia and were like, "Hey, just so you know," and Ethiopia was like, "You need to get out." And so that's the last anybody, as far as I'm aware, has any information. It is so strange to me that she's gone through all of this, and at this point, if she really was a pathological liar who wanted to do it for the attention, I would think she would have leaned into, oh my God, I have a problem. I'm going to go to rehab. I'm going to come back and then I'm going to sell my tour of I am healed from my lying. Let me sell you this book about my story. But
Right.
none of that happened. So
Right. The last thing I just looked her up to see what the last thing we have about her. And okay, on the last thing we know about her was in 2020. The police executed a search warrant. And that's when the video was for it, with her wearing the Ethiopian garb, and she's talking about, Ethiopia. She's going to go back home. She said she was adopted by the Ethiopian community after volunteering for 4 years, which never happened.
yeah.
She said it wasn't a gift, and that she was adopted, and it was a gift from Allah. Never happened. And so the president of Ethiopia said she is not a community member, and she's also not working with the community. He said nobody seemed to know who she was, and he, the president, had only just learned of her backstory and wished her to stop saying she was part of the community. And that was the last we've ever heard from her. There was absolutely nothing else.
Yeah, so I don't know how she managed to basically go aground and hide from everybody forever. She has to have changed her name. She has to have changed where she's living.
Yeah.
But honestly, I don't know. And the fact that it continues to be an issue, and at no point is she acknowledging her lying. She just keeps moving to a different lie and moving forward with this process. And I don't know what it is, but I guarantee you, if I did 1/100th of the crap she did, I would be run out of my industry. I would not ever be trusted again. But my life would be over.
Yeah.
She just keeps leapfrogging.
Grifting and grifting, and it's just sad. It's just really sad.
Yeah, so I am not quite sure what to make of Belle Gibson.
Right.
But I think it goes back to, like, we've talked in the past that you've done a couple of GoFundMes when you were homeless trying to figure out, and people were always a little bit hesitant to give, and this shit is why.
Yeah.
People like Belle Gibson.
Exactly.
And it didn't matter that you could take video of, yourself being out on the street, that you could provide, resources or whatever. There is just such a fundamentally grifty thing in this charitable world.
Yeah.
That
of course. Absolutely. I mean, and the people who donate to my book, they all knew me. They were all my friends, and I paid taxes on it and all that. And it was, but oh God, I mean, there's obviously mental illness involved in here. There's a lot more going on than we'll ever know, I don't think, especially now she's been MIA for 6 years.
Yeah, I mean, quite frankly, like, I don't think we'll ever find out what happened to her. But yeah, so this was such a strange thing to watch. It was both angering and frustrating and hilarious.
All the emotions.
Yeah. And there was so much money involved in this whole process.
Mm-hmm.
There's no record of where any of it went.
Yeah.
And she's living in this huge house. I can't imagine that she's still in that house and owes all this money to the government, and they're just not coming to take it.
Oh, yeah. Nobody knows where she is, so she's not going to have a permanent address. I'm sure she changed her name.
Yeah.
Somewhere else.
Yeah, so I guess the lesson to take away from this is don't lie about everything all the time to everybody ever.
And if you have cancer, go to a doctor.
Yeah. Very
Oh,
seriously,
oh,
think long and hard before you turn away from Western medicine.
mm-hmm.
Like Steve Jobs was all about the Western medicine until it reached a point where it wasn't working. And so
Exactly.
then he was like, let me try this other stuff. I think Andy Kaufman was the same.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that if you are really sick and you've just exhausted the point of what can be done medically,
Mhm.
of course you're going to look and see what else is out there.
Yeah.
But
Desperation does that, of course.
don't start with that.
No, no, don't lead off with that. Well, your body's still strong enough to, because cancer treatments, they are hard on the body. They really are. It's radiation, of course, it's good. But so you want to start strong, with that. And I do understand from my best friend being a hospice nurse, eventually your body is just done. And you're like, I'm finished.
Yeah.
Let's go. I might as well go out eating as much chocolate and ice cream as I can. And that's what I'm going to do. If I get cancer, that's it, babe. Yeah.
But thanks for listening to Real Stories, Real Problems with your hosts, Rachel and Roxanne. We hope you enjoyed our deep dive into the international fraud and the documentary The Search for Instagram's Worst Con Artists. Join us again next week for a glimpse into another financial problem and a documentary all about it. If you enjoyed our show today, please remember to like, subscribe, and leave us a review on your podcast app. Thanks for listening. See you again next week.
Bye for now.